All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to my channel. We're just going to do a few tech checks in the background here just to make sure everything is running smoothly. And I know as soon as people show up, the things I think are running smoothly will not be running smoothly. Give us just a few minutes to work it out.
So AI doesn't exist.
Okay, there's one error I need to fix there. It needs to be going through my headphones. All right, we'll just switch that in the settings here. Good.
Actually, apparently we've all just decided to call it that.
Okay, we've played a few seconds. Now let's go to my channel over here. Go to... Right, I can't think today. It's been one of those kind of days. And in this case, I'm pretty sure that I have taken my thyroid medications regularly, so it shouldn't be an issue. Now, let us go and see if we're getting the sound like we're supposed to get. Then we can actually start. And of course, Athena is right here.
That's kind of annoying.
All right, okay. It looks like we are good. And since we are good, we can begin tonight's stream. Good evening, everyone. I've already introduced myself, but if you didn't know, I am the Mad Computer Scientist. I make videos about tech topics, computer science topics, and math topics that interest me. On Fridays, however, I like to do something a little bit different and do a commentary response to people who I think have faulty logic or, or are just off in some way. In this case, this is a video I've probably been ignoring for a while because it's not so much that her logic is faulty, it's just that she's insisting that something doesn't exist that clearly does, and it's more an issue of her language that's called... Geez, I wish I could start over. It's more an issue with the language she's using rather than what she's saying. I agree, I just don't agree with the way she's saying it. This may mean I will be a little less snarky tonight than I usually am, because I'm pretty sure this woman is smarter than I am, and of course she has more education than I do. The issue is she doesn't have an education in computer science, and this is where she goes off the rails a bit. The good news is this video is an hour long and we will not be watching all of it. I have watched it before, and I believe about a half hour she stops trying to say that any person with a computer science degree can nitpick what she's saying. And that is essentially what we're going to do tonight.
I understand how this happened. There's an area of research in computer science called artificial intelligence. And under that umbrella is like your machine learning, your neural networks, and your deep learning. And so when people make tools using those concepts, they call it artificial intelligence. But that's confusing.
No, that's not quite right. Dr. Collier, what artificial intelligence is, the actual definition that computer scientists use, is any simulation of human intelligence. I know what we can do with ChatGPT and other large language models is impressive, but artificial intelligence is much broader than what ChatGPT and generative art can do.
For the people, because if you put in a headline like AI is a thing that you have to worry about now, people actually think AI exists.
That's because AI does exist. Just because something is essentially a concept or a bit of code doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The number 2 doesn't have any physical existence in the universe, but it is a concept we find very useful.
Even though it doesn't. So this video is not going to be a discussion on AI or how to use it or how to make your own machine learning program. I'm not a computer scientist, actually. I got my PhD in physics and I specialized in astrophysics, and machine learning is really big in astrophysics. And I am going to use artificial intelligence and AI and machine learning interchangeably in this video. Well, I have taken the courses and I've done those little workshops, and I work with AI and machine learning tools at my job. I'm not a computer scientist. That's not what this is. In fact, I'm only going to give the explain like I'm five definition of an AI, a machine.
Okay, and if you're going to do that, I'm going to give the correct definitions because I actually do have a computer science degree. I have a bachelor's in information science, although I started out with machine learning. That program got folded into data science at the university I was attending. Then it turned out I was going to have to go an entire year extra if I stayed on that course, so I switched over to information science to be done faster. When I applied for the master's program, I switched back to data science because specifically I am interested in machine learning and artificial intelligence. But yes, that also means I don't have a master's degree yet, and you are at least 2 degrees ahead of me.
Learning tool. All right. Imagine you have 100,000 pictures, and they're of all the things like buildings and vehicles and nature and animals, and you want all the pictures of cats. You can't look through 100,000 pictures, that would take way too long. So, what you're going to do is you're going to write a computer algorithm that will sort through the pictures for you. And so, when you ask it for cats, it gives you all the pictures of cats. Great. How do you do that? First, you get a subset of pictures, maybe like 400 pictures. And inside that subset, there are 15 pictures of cats. And you label them all cat, not a cat. Okay. And then you give that data set, that smaller data set, to the computer program, and you say, hey.
Okay, for those of you who aren't familiar with the terminology I'm going to use here, I'm going to tell you what she's trying to explain is essentially training the data that will be used for AI to make its results when data it hasn't been trained on is fed through it.
Teach yourself how to recognize the correct answer. Look for patterns in the pictures of cats so that when I feed you this data set, you throw out all the pictures except for the pictures of cats. It's machine learning. You're not telling it how to identify cats. You're only telling it these are cats, these are not cats. And the computer algorithm will teach itself to look for patterns and identify the cats. Great, you've done it.
And I've heard plenty of people say that this is essentially how learning actually works with humans.
Now you want to test it. So you have a second set of pictures. This time you know which are cats, but the computer's not going to know which are cats. You feed it and you say, hey, use that machine learning tool you just made about cats on this data set. And if it gets all the cats, yay, you have.
Actually, you would probably go through this a couple of times, and when you use larger and larger training data sets, the algorithm should become progressively more accurate. 400 images is kind of small for training data.
Have a cat finding machine learning program. And so now you can give it all 100,000 pictures and it will find all the cats. We did it. But there's a problem. You see, that's a machine learning program. It's not a artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence doesn't exist, actually. I can highlight this issue for you.
No, you can't, because you're already saying something that is wrong. Artificial intelligence most definitely does exist. It is just a series of techniques we use to simulate human intelligence. Is what you're trying to say that artificial intelligence is not the same as human intelligence because no one is claiming that?
You are a human person and you have intelligence, right? Here's a bunch of cats. Pick all the cats.
Well, I've seen more than a few people over the summer who I'm not sure that they have intelligence, but that may be more of my cynical side speaking after arguing with people about how 1 times 1 really equals 1.
Okay, I assume you did something like this. Okay, if I gave that same exact test to the computer, it would give the same answer probably more quickly. But what if there was like a little stuffed cat? You see it and you didn't click it. I wanted you to click it. That's a cat, right? It's a stuffed cat, but it's a cat. If I'm talking to a person, I could say, hey, bud, you didn't click that stuffed cat. And you would say, oh, I thought you just wanted the animal. Do you want me to click stuffed cats? And I would say, yeah, like all cats. So if there's like a Yeti bottle with a cat sticker, or someone's got a cat tattoo, or you see a little statue of a little cat, click all those too. And because you're a person with intelligence, you would say, got it, great. But what if I wanted to tell the computer, like, hey, I want you to do stuffed cats too, all cats, everything that even resembles a cat a little bit. I want you to find that.
Well, you would include those in your training data set. And you would probably, if you wanted to differentiate between stuffed cats and live cats, like the one that is currently trying to crawl up my arm, you would tag it stuffed cat and live cat. This is a vast oversimplification, of course, because the algorithms that do this are complicated. And more importantly, computer scientists aren't really sure how exactly a lot of the machine learning algorithms work. They just seem to.
And call it a cat. I can't actually do that. I can't say, hey, machine learning tool, you missed this one. Why didn't you call
Yes, you can. It just depends on how you set up the data.
was a cat? I don't know how it decided what was cats. There are computer scientists who will be angry at me for saying this, but this is a black box program. I fed it a bunch of images. It learned how to identify cats somehow. I don't.
Dr. Collier, if you think computer scientists have an issue with the idea of black boxes in their work, clearly you've never heard of lambda calculus.
Don't know how. It's looking for patterns. It's not intelligent, and it spits out the cats. And when I find an error, like, hey, this stuffed cat is a cat, I can't ask it to recognize this as a cat. What I have to do is get a new data set with tons of little pictures of cats and feed it back through and say, hey, also these are cats. Okay. So when I do my test a second time and I give you these images,
Athena,
you're going to
please
say,
stop
all these are
clawing
cats.
my
And I'm going to be like, great job. You're so smart. You did it.
clawing
Good
my
stuff.
neck.
If I gave this to the computer, it would
Speaking
find
of
all the
cats,
animal cats because we already know it can do that. Now it's got the new data. I retrained it and it will find these cats, but it's also going to call this a cat because when I fed it this picture, it was like, okay, long cylindrical glass things are cats. This is a cat, right? And that's what I mean when I say it's not intelligent. I can't easily.
no one is saying it's actually intelligent. They're saying it's a simulation of human intelligence. And what we have been able to do with ChatGPT and similar programs is impressive. But a lot of people don't understand what they're designed to do and think they're designed to give you the right answer.
And that's what I mean when I say it's not intelligent. I can't easily tell my machine learning program, like, oh, buddy, like you can see a cat. This is also a cat, right? The same way you would converse with a human. These programs are great. They're interesting.
Well, if you're doing an image recognition algorithm, no, you would not do it the same way you would do it with a human. You've already described how you would do it. You would do it by putting different tags on it and seeing if it can identify the patterns in images that are flasks, as what you were showing, and the ones that are cats. And ideally, the larger the training data set you have, the more accurate its output will become. You won't reach 100% accuracy, but you can reach reasonable accuracy.
They're useful, but they're not AI. Yet we're calling it that.
No, they are exactly AI because, again, the concept you seem to keep missing is that AI is not trying to be intelligent, it's trying to simulate human intelligence. This is something I think a lot of people who aren't computer scientists don't get, and they should. And it's been essentially the way AI has been defined since the days of Turing and the people who worked on AI, whose name I cannot remember, but I should be able to.
That seems like
Give me a few seconds while I do some Google search and find the name of the first AI
it'd
researcher.
be a problem for science communication, right? But I want to highlight some things that these are useful for. They're not artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence doesn't exist, actually. Well, what if you are an astronomer and you have 10 million pictures of galaxies and they're all different galaxies? What if you want to answer a simple question about these 10 million galaxies? Like, how many of these galaxies are elliptical and how many of them are disks?
All right, I am back. So, as I was saying, the father of AI is, let me check the name here, John McCarthy, who died in 2011. The first AI researcher was indeed Alan Turing. And hello, Titan Uranus. And what you're going to find, even in computing and machine intelligence, which I believe is the name of Turing's paper, is that he is saying that the question of can machines think is meaningless. Even the imitation game he proposes, which is now known as the Turing test, is about getting a computer to behave as if it were an intelligent human being. He thought the question of can machines think was meaningless, and that you were asking the wrong question. Even today, as far as I can tell, most AI researchers still think asking if a machine can think the way a human does is a meaningless question. The programs you're mentioning are designed to mimic the way the brain operates, although we know that biological systems do not work the same way digital computers do.
And how many of them look very wonky? You could open every picture and sort it into a folder, but that would take way too long. You could hire some grad students that you underpay and force to live in poverty, and they could sort it, but that would be kind of mean because of the underpayment and also the fact that that
Or they could work as substitute teachers.
would not be a very good PhD thesis, and they probably wouldn't get a job after. You could make people do it. So you could start a program like the Galaxy Zoo, which is a cool little thing that you can go do right now, and it will teach you how to identify galaxies based on images, and it will let you sort them. And that's kind of fun. That's kind of fast, and you don't have to feel guilty about that because people are just having fun being citizen scientists. But it still takes a really long time. 100 million is a whole lot of galaxies. So instead, machine learning tools, right? Give it 10,000 galaxies that you've classified as elliptical or wonky or disk, and teach it how to do that. And it will develop a tool. It's a machine learning. You're absent.
No, it will recognize the patterns based on how the tool is already designed. It's not going to develop a tool unless it's a machine learning algorithm that is designed to produce code. And there was an AI startup that said it was going to produce that, but like most of the modern large language models, which is what it was, it's kind of peaked. And although it's slightly more accurate at writing code than ChatGPT and Google Gemini, it has an accuracy rate of working programs of about 12%. Generally, as a programmer, when I use these AI tools at all, what I'm doing for is looking for, did I misplace a semicolon? Is my Python program indented properly? Stuff that it's very easy for humans to miss. And AI is really good at spotting that.
From this process, it develops a way to classify these images, and then you test it. And if it gets all those right in the test data, you can run it on your 100,000 galaxies. Did I say 100,000? 100 million galaxies. And as long as you know the limitations of that tool, as long as you have someone who's an expert involved in the post-processing of that data, it is a very useful tool to use to analyze just an unfathomable amount of data. That's what machine learning is for. It is not intelligent. Notice I said you need an expert. You need an expert all along the way tracking this process. You can't just throw machine learning tools at the public and be like, you think it's AI, I guess that's fine, whatever.
It is AI despite what you seem to think.
Couldn't do that. You wouldn't just do that, would you?
Well, I would, but there is a reason why I've called this channel Mad Computer Scientist. And perhaps maybe you should look at my reading list for last summer that I have on Twitter that has a bunch of different books that are going through the problems that exist with AI, statistical models, and the way social media works.
I guess only if you charge like $29.99 a month or something. What if you're doing medical research? You give your machine learning program 100,000 images of like from MRIs of like people's lungs, and you're like, some of these have tuberculosis, some of these don't. And what you can do is see if the computer gets better at diagnosing tuberculosis from an MRI than doctors are. And what do you know? They've done that, and the computers are better. Great. So now, if you're researching how symptoms of tuberculosis develop so you can start diagnosing it earlier, you can try to figure out the pattern that this machine learning program is finding. Like, how exactly is it making this diagnosis? Now, this is very hard. Remember, you can't ask.
Or let me suggest we do this instead. Instead of trying to figure out the pattern, how about having the program, I don't know, log its data that it's using to make those decisions? Then we can have other data scientists go through and figure that out.
Ask the program, like, why did you make this decision? And it gets even harder when you do your neural networks and your deep learning and all that stuff. It's hard to figure out, like, what exactly made you say this had tuberculosis. You can't ask. Through a lot of A/B testing, putting up two images that are almost identical, the doctors were able to figure out how the computer program was identifying tuberculosis more often than human doctors.
Wait, you're telling me that a lot of AI is nothing but if-then decisions? Wow, what an amazing discovery. I'm sure computer scientists everywhere will be shocked at that one.
And it turns out that the machine learning program was weighting the age of the machine that took the image. So if it was an older machine, it would say that it's more likely to be tuberculosis. And that's just by the virtue of the fact that older machines are at places where there's more tuberculosis. It's not intelligent, actually.
Actually, that's not a bad reason for the machine to pick tuberculosis. It's not one a human would use, but it is something where the machine is not understanding that there's a difference between correlation and causation.
That's a useless piece of information, right? I mean, it's helpful if you are a medical doctor. If you're diagnosing someone, it is important to know if they have recently been to somewhere where there's tuberculosis, and then you would be more likely to test them for that. But if you are a researcher trying to look for early signs of tuberculosis, like the age of the MRI machine is useless information to you. It's kind of funny, right? Because, like, a human being would know to throw out that information because human beings are intelligent. But machine learning programs are not. Artificial intelligence doesn't exist. And so,
Again, no one is claiming that artificial intelligence is trying to simulate human intelligence.
if you don't know the limitations of your tool and you start using it to just start.
And what makes you think that computer scientists don't know these limitations? Just because you don't know what they are doesn't mean the people whose job it is to study this do not understand what they are.
Diagnosing tuberculosis, it's just going to say, like, okay, everyone who's on a machine from 2009 has tuberculosis, and everyone who gets an MRI on a 2023 machine doesn't. And that's not useful. That's not actually diagnosing anything. I hope I've highlighted two big misconceptions about AI for you. The first is that artificial intelligence exists.
And as we've pointed out, it absolutely does exist.
It doesn't. The second is that we know how machine learning tools work.
This is actually an accurate misconception. We don't really know how the machine learning algorithms make the decisions they do. It is somewhat of a mystery. It's just that these algorithms kind of work.
That's not true. We don't know how it gives us an answer. When we say, is this tuberculosis? We don't know how it got to the yes or no. We just know that it's saying yes or no. And when we give it a certain specific data set, it gets those right. You can use it as a tool. It can be very helpful, but it's very important for you to know its limitations. And because artificial intelligence doesn't exist, you shouldn't use it to make decisions, right? You shouldn't say, oh, this TB test works perfectly, fire all the doctors. You still need a human checking it because AI doesn't exist. In medical situations, you want a human person that has intelligence making the decisions. Imagine a group of 9-year-olds. What is that, like fourth grade? They're gonna go to the library for some unsupervised learning, and the teacher, he says, hey kids, I want you all to write a 2-page paper on a historical figure. So the hero of our story, Sophie, decides to write her paper on Pocahontas. And instead of spending her time researching this on the internet or going to find an encyclopedia or like one of those little golden books, she gets on her mom's ChatGPT account, which costs like $59 a month. And she says, please write a 2-page paper on the historical figure Pocahontas in the style of a 4th grader. Now, ChatGPT is a machine learning tool. The data it's been fed is basically the internet, okay? And what it will do is take samples of text from all over the internet, rearrange them, rewrite them, like thesauricize them, and
Legend Titan is a moderator on this channel.
stuff them into a new paper that looks like a human wrote it. ChatGPT's goal is to make text that looks as if a human wrote it. ChatGPT's goal is not to make text that makes sense, actually, but like that's for another day.
Well, no, ChatGPT's goal is to come up with text that sounds like a human-sounding response. It helps if it makes sense.
So Sophie prints it out, and it looks very much like a
But I would also like to point out that the way LLMs work is that they're using statistics to generate the next word.
paper. And she's like, fantastic, I've done it. She goes home and she starts to feel bad because she's the hero of the story. And so she starts reading her paper and she's like, because she notices that 2 paragraphs of this paper are about how she can speak to trees and her best friend is a little raccoon and she's the only human ever to learn all languages from the colors of the wind, blue corn moon, etc. This is a problem, right? She asked for a paper on the historical figure Pocahontas, and ChatGPT was like, I looked on the internet for Pocahontas and I found the scripts of Pocahontas 1 and Pocahontas 2. So she could get back on ChatGPT, which costs like $100 a month for this garbage that it spits out. And she could say, please write me a 2-page paper on the historical figure Pocahontas in the style of a 4th grader. Do not include any information after 1991. When did Pocahontas come out? Like 97? So she could work around that and she would have to read it. She would have to go through it. She would have to spend a couple hours with ChatGPT getting it to print out something that looks like a 4th grader wrote it and also has factual information. Or she could take out her little tablet and she could just fact check every single line of text that ChatGPT had picked out and remove all the lies and replace it with information that is true. And that's another big misconception about AI right there. For some reason, people think because it's a computer, it cannot lie.
Well, technically it's not lying, it's just spitting out the next word based on its training data. Lie implies intent. The computer is just spitting out inaccurate information because people lie. Titan, I'm not sure he knows what the Hardy-Weinberg equation is.
To you. When with AI,
I'm not even sure I remember what the Hardy-Weinberg equation is anymore.
there is no fidelity. It will just lie. It will make up information. The goal is not to be a fact checker or tell you the truth. The goal of ChatGPT is to write text as if a human wrote it. And even if it lies, it still is successful. It meets its goal. Think about...
All right, I've actually brought this point up myself several times. This is one thing I think people actually do frequently misunderstand about what large language models are designed to do. And she's correct. They're designed to come out with human-sounding responses, not come up with the right answer.
Sophie again. She could have gone to the library and spent her 2 hours reading Wikipedia and writing a paper, but instead she tried to save time and just ask ChatGPT. If she had turned in that ChatGPT paper, she would have gotten an F. So instead, she had to fact check every single sentence, rewrite it, rearrange it, and she probably spent 3 hours total. ChatGPT is a tool. It can be useful, but it's not going to save you time unless you're an expert. What I think it could be useful for is if you're a scientist and you've written your whole grant proposal and you have the science portion done, and you've got all your nice plots, and you've got the funding portion done, and you're just staring at the introduction like, I don't know what to write because the introduction is the hardest part. You could just get on ChatGPT and be like, what's the most interesting thing about lightning? Give me one.
Well, you can tell large language models to write better AI, and they would come up with some code that will start on that, but they're just doing it based on their training data. And what she's saying here is also something I agree with. Like I said, I'm not going to be as harsh on her because she's generally in the right place. She's just misunderstanding some things. But usually it will not write a very complex program. And frequently, if you ask ChatGPT or Google Gemini to write code for you, it is wrong.
One paragraph on why lightning is important for science, and it would produce a paragraph. And because you're an expert, you could read that paragraph and immediately fact check it and just rearrange the text and add your own words, and then boom, you have a nice little introduction paragraph. You used it as inspiration. You used it as a tool. It did not write your paragraph for you because it would be garbage if it did that. Instead, you got ideas, you rewrote it, and it helped you solve a blank page problem. This brings me to an AI tool that I use all the time. It's a little app. You can download it on your phone, and you take a picture of a plant, and it uses an image matching tool to identify the plant for you. Based on what I've just told you about AI, about how artificial intelligence doesn't exist, and also with AI, there's no fidelity. You don't know how good the information you're getting out is. Do you think I trust this app to actually give me the answer? No, of course not. I use it as a tool. I take a picture of the plant. It says it's this. I can go onto Google. I can go to a textbook. I can look at the plants and I can be like, is it actually this plant? It gives me a starting point to search. If I didn't have this, I would just be searching like pink leaf plant, and that would take forever. That would be hard. It's a tool you can use to help get the actual information. If I was lost and I had my phone for some reason and I was starving to death and I could take a picture of a mushroom, I still wouldn't eat the mushroom. And it says right when you open the app, like, do not use this for foraging. Do not trust the information that comes out of it. Would you eat the mushroom? Do you trust the little app? Like, what if you take a
Listen, I don't trust most of the things on my cell phone, and that's even if they aren't AI.
picture from a different angle and it tells you it's a different mushroom? You don't eat the mushroom. Let's put ourselves in like 1 year in the future, and there is now a Skin Dr. MD app, and you download it and you take a picture of the mole that you're worried about, and it's like, you're good. Don't go to the doctor. It's probably fine. Do you trust the app? Do you trust the app after knowing that artificial intelligence doesn't exist?
Well, the thing is, even after all of your protestations, I still know that AI exists and you are wrong. Do I trust the app for foraging or whatever it is you're mentioning? Or I believe you're talking about skin care here? No. But I could use the app as a starting point, which you're suggesting. There have been actually real-life problems where a suicide prevention line, an eating disorder line, tried to replace its call-in counselors with a chatbot, and the results were disastrous.
The app does not understand the gravity of the situation of skin cancer, right? If you go to a medical doctor, they're going to check it out. They're going to take it seriously. The app is just going to be like, yeah, it's probably fine. I don't know. Also, there's no fidelity. Have I mentioned that it'll just lie? Like, if it takes a picture of a weird mole and it's never seen that type of mole before and it can't match it to anything, it's just going to be like, it's probably fine. I don't know. It's good. You're good. Are you going to trust the Skin Cancer MD app? Please say no. Please tell me you won't. This shouldn't exist. AI doesn't exist either. This actually brings me.
Well, there's a difference between something that shouldn't exist and something that should exist. I think the issue you're trying to get at is that we have a lot of CEOs who don't really understand the technology, pushing it as something really cool that's almost always accurate, and a bunch of computer scientists who are, admittedly, realizing what they're doing is really cool, but not really educating the public about the limitations of the software. And I think this is going to be an ongoing issue, especially if people still think Elon Musk is a genius.
Me to another misconception about AI, which is that AI will take your job. AI can't take your job because artificial intelligence doesn't exist and there's no fidelity in the results from artificial intelligence. Like, you always need a person to check the results. You always need an expert in whatever you're doing to check the results, because you cannot trust the results of AI. So when people say, we're not going to need to go to doctors anymore, you'll just stick your hand in the scanner and it'll measure your blood pressure, it's just like, no, it won't. You're still going to have.
Wait, we actually have that kind of technology right now, but that's not AI. This is another thing that bothers me. A lot of people are labeling AI technology to things that aren't AI. Not every program you write is going to be artificial intelligence. It's only artificial intelligence if it's trying to simulate human intelligence. The automatic cuff at the drugstore that measures your blood pressure, or that little thing they stick on your finger at the doctor's office called the pulse oximeter, isn't AI. They're cool technology, but they aren't AI.
Have to go to the doctor, because if you have real intelligence like a human person, and you're not going to trust what the computer has to say because it doesn't have intelligence. I do want to say, though, it will take our jobs, in the fact that, like, there's a thing that's already happened where AI replaces jobs, but really they just fire expensive people and then hire them back as contractors. Let me give you an example. Like 15 years ago, when Google Translate started getting pretty good, people were like, hey, we can fire all our translators. We can just use this Google Translate program for $1,100 a month. And then they realized that AI doesn't exist and there's no fidelity and it would just output like garbage. Google Translate is pretty good for like a sign, right? Or in an emergency situation, you can use Google Translate to communicate asthma attack. But if you're translating a novel, like a huge piece of text, wording is important, themes are important. And
again, artificial intelligence has already been defined. It's any attempt by a computer to simulate human intelligence. Not all programs are designed to do that. Your calculator is not trying to simulate artificial intelligence or simulate human intelligence. It's just trying to do math.
Cultural context is important. You cannot trust Google Translate to do that. But people fired their translators, realized it made a garbage book, and then hired the translator back as like a copy editor.
See, this is also another thing that I think is happening. Yes, I am talking about general AI. You asked for a definition of AI. You did not ask for a definition of one of the subfields of AI. In any case, going back to what I was saying, this is a problem I think is happening all over many industries, and I think the tech industry has been hit the hardest by this. A lot of tech companies are firing their IT staff and programmers because they think ChatGPT can write code. ChatGPT does not write code well, and I think they're also going to run into problems where ChatGPT can't fix newly found security vulnerabilities, so they are going to have to hire their tech people back. I think ChatGPT will be a great productivity tool that can increase productivity, but it's not going to replace people.
You're not.
Well, I actually can run some artificial intelligence apps on 2 of my calculators, but that's because they can run Python.
Translating the book, you're just fixing the shitty translation that the garbage app spit out. And so you used to be worth like a salary and benefits, and now you're like $15 an hour. In the misconception that AI will take our jobs, it's true that terrible capitalists will fire lots of people and replace them and then realize that they made a mistake and then try to hire them back at a much lower salary, but they won't actually take the job because the expert will still have to come and do the job.
Well, I think they'll try that at first, but then I think they'll realize it still takes education to be a computer programmer.
You know what I mean? Oh my God, where are we at? You should not trust AI to make decisions because AI does not exist. And
AI does exist. I don't trust it to make decisions other than what it's coded to make. And what was the third one? Let's go there.
Also, there's no fidelity in the results from AI. Humans make decisions. AI stuff can be used as a tool to offer data in that situation, but we should understand the limitations, okay?
If only someone had said that earlier in the stream.
Okay. The third thing I want to talk about with misunderstandings of AI is along the lines of ethics. So, AI
Actually, I think this is the point where I start agreeing with her.
tools are built with data sets that are made in the world. And the world is actually a terrible, terrible place full of inequalities and terribleness. The year is 2020. A medical student in the UK realizes that he's learning about all these infectious diseases and skin diseases and rashes and skin cancers. And all the pictures in the book are pictures of white people. And that's a problem because not all the people in the world are white. And so if you're a doctor and you're treating patients, you're not going to have the knowledge to look at skin diseases and rashes and skin cancers and all those things on human bodies because you don't have all the information. So he made a little book called Mind the Gap, and it's got pictures of very common skin diseases, rashes, skin cancers, all that stuff with people of all different skin tones because diseases appear differently based on your skin color. This was really prescient. Is that the word? I'm going to go with it in 2020 because the government of the United Kingdom was like, hey guys, the hospitals are overwhelmed. If you're having trouble breathing for some reason, don't go to the hospital unless your lips are blue. And that's a problem because not all skin tones show blue lips when they lack oxygen. White people.
What she's talking about is something that actually has occurred long before computers started to favor mostly white people in their photo data sets. In fact, Kodak had an issue with one of its calibration papers that it used for photography.
People's turn blue, but not everybody's. So if you are giving that as a diagnostic to people with no medical training, people could die, right? Like you're sitting at home saying, I can't breathe, but my lips aren't blue yet, and dying. And that's terrible. And that was in 2020, so that's 3 years ago. Now, obviously, the medical system, there's lots of problems there. There's inequalities there too. But if you are building an app that is looking for skin disorders, like the app we just invented, you are going to input all the pictures you have of skin disorders. And apparently, since the invention of the camera, like 100 years ago, and the year 2020, people have only took pictures of white people's skin disorders. Apparently, because that's how the medical students were learning it. So when you feed it all that data, it is going to be heavily weighted towards identifying things on white people and nobody else. So if you take a picture of your rash and you're a white person, maybe it would get it. Don't trust an app. Just go to the doctor. I know that's hard to say when no one has healthcare, but just go to the doctor. But if you're not white and you take a picture, it's just going to be like, doesn't look like anything to me. You're probably fine. I don't know what it is.
There are good reasons, especially in this country, why people of color may not trust the medical establishment.
And imagine that, but with like every single machine learning tool. There's this misconception that computers cannot be biased.
Okay, this is kind of not true, but the general gist of what she's saying is correct. A computer algorithm cannot be biased. It really can't. It's going to come out with whatever it comes out, regardless of who or what runs it. However, the people who feed it the data, or the people who come up with the data, certainly can be biased, and the data training sets may contain that bias.
Like they're going to make decisions with logic, decision trees, blah. But if you build computers on data that's biased, the resulting algorithm will be biased. I was going to bring up an example of a phone company that made a little app in like the past few years that would take a picture of a thing or a person or a building and categorize it in your little phone folder. And they tested it. It worked great. They released the phone to the public to buy in stores. And every single time that phone took a picture of a Black person, it put it into a primate category. Now that's offensive, right? There's like a whole history of racism with the phone doing that. And that's because the data that trained that algorithm was biased. They didn't give it enough pictures of Black people. So when confronted with a Black person, that the algorithm was just like, I don't know what to do with this picture. I don't know what this is. Does that mean that the person who coded that algorithm is a huge racist? I mean, it doesn't mean they're not a racist, but it does mean that their data set was lacking diversity. And so you can't use it. You can't use that algorithm because it doesn't have a data set that actually reflects the world. It reflects the inequalities in the world. And I told you I wanted to bring up that story. And when I Googled it, it's happened 2 times with 2 different companies and 2 different algorithms in the past few years. The exact same thing. It's so I think sometimes people have this misconception that if something like that happens, it's because the programmer was racist. And you could just
Well, sometimes, yes, the programmer is racist. I mean, programmers are humans, but a lot of times what happens, especially if you're using large training data sets collected from the internet, you will actually find societal biases programmed in. That is what the academic Dr. Sophia Noble is talking about in her book, Algorithms of Oppression. You can get a more generalized breakdown if you watch the Nova special called Search Engine Breakdown. I have a copy of her book somewhere, which I would love to give to people, but unfortunately, it is a copyrighted book and you're going to have to buy it off of Amazon.
open up the algorithm and there's a little loop that's like be extra racist and you can just like uncheck that box. But that's
The sad thing is, programmers can put that in there if they so desired.
not what this is. It's machine learning. You don't know how it's making the decision. It's a black box. All you know is the data that you put in. And if you put in the data of the world, it is going to be biased. Like the world is biased. Like imagine that you are giving a scholarship. And so you want to like not have to look at the application. So you're like, tell you what, let's just take all the resumes of all the people who did really well in college and we'll train our algorithm on that. And then when we get the resumes from the people applying for the scholarship, we'll just have it pick who's going to be the most successful. Well, who's the most successful in college? It's like rich women, right? Like the people who do the best in college are rich women, like women from wealthy backgrounds. And if you have a scholarship, isn't it gonna seem weird when all 25 recipients are like Ashley's and then 10 years later Sophia's and then
Oh, Dr. Collier, I guarantee you that in the computer science departments, you will not even see more than 3 Ashleys. You probably won't even see one.
10 years later, God, what's the name now? Oakley's, and they all look the same and they all went to the same high school. Like it's because your program is biased. It reflects the world, but it doesn't reflect like what should actually happen, which should be like an equal distribution of scholarships. So what you could do is you could be like, uh-oh, the machine learning algorithm is just picking women. Oh no. So you could take off gender off the resumes, you could take off the name, but it's a black box, right? So like the next year when all the people still look the same, you're going to have to spend a whole bunch.
Computer scientists actually can go in and adjust these algorithms to correct for these discrepancies. The problem is you have to get everyone to agree that this is a problem.
Of time A/B testing only to realize that, oh, it's looking for the same zip code and it's looking for people who were cheerleaders because most cheerleaders are women and women tend to do better in college. And it's like every single step you have to check for biases in your data, but you can't do that because if you're giving it real world data, it is biased. Imagine asking a machine learning program what a president looks like. There's actually already a thing where people who give mortgages are not allowed to use these tools. Like they have to have a human check the application, because even if you remove like the names and the birthplaces, the algorithm still figures out who is Black. And because
There is a story that I cannot confirm if it is true or not, where a company decided to be more fair and equitable by using a large language model program essentially to make its hiring decisions. Now, they did use the program and it did make the hiring decisions, and they were hoping the program would hire more women, which was what they were going for. Unfortunately, the company used its own hiring data as its training data, so the company hired women at exactly the same rate as before because it was looking for the same biases that the people who did the hiring had.
there's this huge history of denying mortgages to Black people. Historically, historic data means that those algorithms are biased towards giving mortgages to Black people. And so they figure it out because it's a machine learning program, and they deny people who could totally pay the mortgage and should totally be given the mortgage, and they have to have a human person check. It's a problem. Yeah, that's a problem. AI doesn't exist.
Well, you could actually not consider the neighborhoods, and if certain names are associated with a certain racial or ethnic background, just have the program not choose the names in its weighting data.
There's no decision making process. It's just identifying patterns, which means you should not use it to make decisions. But also, they just spit out lies. AI does not tell the truth. There's no fidelity, which means you should not use it to make decisions. AI is built on data sets that are biased. As a result, the decisions made by AI are biased. Therefore, it is unethical to use AI to make decisions. You need an expert checking the decision. It is a tool you can use, but it should not be used by itself. I have a second bullet point in this ethics of data science thing that's less important, but still we should talk about. Ethically, you should not use AI to produce products because AI is trained on stolen data. Like ChatGPT is fed the internet, it is fed books.
Well, its training data is based on stuff it gets from the internet, and generally they're trying to find ways to do things more ethically now. But the hugest problem here is with AI art, and I don't know where those legal battles are going to end up.
Books and music and code software that is built by humans who did things, like art that is made by artists, and it takes all those.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Collier, you have no idea how much code is just copy and pasted from Stack Overflow, do you?
Things and smushes them together to make garbage. And if you were to take that garbage and, make a YouTube video and say, this is my special fancy video where I did Game of Thrones, but the story is Dracula and the art is SpongeBob. You didn't make any of that, right? You stole all of that from the makers of SpongeBob and the author of Game of Thrones and the author of Dracula. Like, that doesn't belong to.
Well, here's the thing, there is a difference legally when you base something off the author of Dracula and if you base something off the work of George R.R. Martin. And the difference is Dracula is in the public domain and that is allowed. In fact, there is plenty of new art that comes from using works that have been passed into the public domain, including dozens of Frankenstein derivative movies.
You. And it is unethical for you to present it as if you made something because you did not make anything. And it is legally a problem when you try to profit off the works of other people. Lots of lawsuits popping up about this now, by the way, so I'm not the first to think of this. But ethically, it's a problem for you to be like,
And there were ways around this if the programmers had been more careful. The programmers could have just used open source art, public domain art, and not bothered with commercial art. The problem is the people trying to do AI art. All right, go ahead, Titan, but Dr. Tapioca Weasel will be on next week because I actually wanted to have a physicist go over what Terrence Howard was saying because, while his math is in no way correct, some of his physics is actually real, some of it is almost real, and some of it is bizarre as the sun takes a crap to give birth to planets.
I wrote a song, when really you were just asking ChatGPT to be like, write a song like Prince would write a song, because you didn't write that. Prince wrote a bunch of songs. A computer program smushed them together to produce something that looks like a song but is garbage. And now you're saying you wrote a song. Do you know what I mean? Like, ethically, you should not use this to make stuff. You can use it as a tool to get ideas, but legally, that stuff doesn't belong to you. Like, you can build off it. You can write your own, like,
Well, in your example, yes, but if I say write me a song based off the works of who was the guy who wrote Oh Susanna? Stephen Foster. That is absolutely legal.
often people will write fan fiction. Like, I really like Batman, and I've written a Batman fan fiction universe novel. And then they take that and they chew on it a bit, and they change around the story, and the characters get minds of their own, and they can just change the names. And now it's a thing that they made, right? They worked off of something else, but then they made something that's their own. If you just ask Chat,
I would argue even if you just set a new story in the Batman universe, you're still making it something you made. It's just you're using copyrighted material owned by someone else. And fan fiction has had an interesting position where, yeah, a lot of companies don't like it, but a lot of companies realize, hey, this seems to drive interest in our product. We're not going to do anything to stop it. The worst company I've seen for this is Paramount, who actually tried to take down a high quality, fan made Star Trek film.
GPT
And the sad thing is, if Paramount were smart about it, they would have hired these people to make what they were making as a fan film as an official Star Trek movie in the universe.
to write Batman fan fiction, but the main character, the main love interest is Angela Collier. That's not a thing that I made. That's just stolen from Batman. And it's going to be garbage because someone's going to have to go through and rewrite it and change everything because it's garbage. It's not ethical to use AI tools to make decisions, to make products. My final bullet point in my little ethics category, which I'm going to make a smaller text because it's like not as important as like the diversity, the inequality issue, but it's unethical for you to use AI tools to make shitty AI art and force me to look at it.
Isn't that a bit of a difficult position for a college professor to hold? I mean, that's one of the best things about my job is I don't have to look at students' papers right now.
I don't want to see this lame shit. This is garbage. You can't get on some image generator and be like, do Star Trek TNG, but as the Muppets. And then
Have you seen the Orville, Dr. Collier? That is essentially Star Trek The Next Generation, filtered through Seth MacFarlane. Now, honestly, I think that Paramount should have let Seth MacFarlane do a Star Trek show because he is a huge Star Trek fan.
make a bunch of shirts and pretend that you made art. What you did was write a prompt And then what the AI did was make some garbage that I don't want to look at. It is unethical for me to have to see this shit everywhere. I hate it. How can you do this to me? All you've done is write a tweet circa 2006 and you've stolen some art from a bunch of people who worked very hard on it. And now you're like, money, please. I did a thing. I did an art. Oh my God, guys, money, please. I'm in a lot of YouTube forums because my sound is bad, my video is bad, and there's like reflections on my glasses, and I don't know how to fix that. The YouTube forums are not helpful because they are inundated with these.
You actually do need to get special glasses to fix that, and I understand the problem with reflections on your glasses in YouTube videos.
People who are like, I'm going to use an AI text generator to write scary stories, and then I'm going to use an AI sound editor to make an AI voice to read the stories, and then I'm going to use an AI image generator to make scary pictures to match the stories, and then I'm going to make a YouTube channel and I'm going to be like Mr. Beast and I'm going to get $10 million a year because I made something. And it's like, no, you made nothing. You made garbage. No one wants to watch that.
All right, this is actually a trend that is real, and it doesn't just involve AI. The problem existed before these AI chatbots could do this, and the process is crudely and colloquially called the enshittification of the internet. All it means is that commercial products slowly over time degrade in quality. Like we all realize if we're old enough how great of a tool Google was as its initial search engine. We also kind of hate it now. I really don't want Google's search engine to have an AI tool answering my question. Why would I want that? Because I know the AI chatbots often have a worse accuracy rating than Google.
No one wants to look at AI generated art while listening to an AI voice read a dumb, terrible piece of shit story that's completely unedited. I mean, no one wants that. No one wants. I'm mad that you made me read that. That is your idea. No,
You should have been here last week when we were going over a Kirk Cameron video someone smashed together and forgot to take an ad out at the end about Lee Strobel's life.
didn't make anything. That's garbage. It's trash. There's a thing that comes up when new tools and new technology gets invented where the AI people who make art really like to talk about this, where they say, when photography first came out, people thought that wasn't art either. So when I get on ChatGPT and I tell it that I want the story of the Matrix but written in feudal Japan, and then I try to make that a book, that's art. They don't understand. That's art. I spend hours writing prompts. They say that. They say like, no, you can't just write a prompt. You have to.
Here's the thing, you actually can write a prompt, something like that, like, show me how the Matrix would take place if it were written in feudal Japan, and use that as a starting point for something you want to write. Now, honestly, I think you'd be better off searching what life was like in feudal Japan, or just looking for some anime that already did that, but that's just me.
To write a prompt. Like you have to, I put my soul into my prompts. I'm like Phineas and Ferb, pink background, film noir, banana. I did that. That came from my soul. That's art. And I don't like this argument because it's not art. I think it's more like fashion, actually. Like fashion is art, and it has been for hundreds of years. And people play with color and silhouette and texture, and they make gorgeous things. And now people make like shows, and their art is the clothes, but there's music and there's backgrounds and there's dance, and it's art, right? But also like people just make fashion in their homes, and that's also art. Have you seen this adorable boy make Hawaiian shirts for his father? Artist, right? But not all fashion is art. Some fashion
I just hope there isn't someone in Lenox, Alabama, who tries to adopt that child to make his Hawaiian shirts.
is literal garbage, like Shein. Shein just like washes the red carpet. They steal the idea. They make a shitty knockoff and they sell it, and it gets shipped across the seas, and people open it and they're like, ew, this smells bad and it feels gross, and the tag says, oh God, help me, please, and they throw it in the trash. Like, that's what AI generated art is. It's garbage. It's trash. I don't want to have to look at it. I'm mad that you're making me look at it. It's Pixar, right? They use machine learning tools, right? They use it as a tool in their art, which they make art. I mean, this one wasn't very good, was it? But it's art. They made a thing. They used machine learning to make an animation. But they still had animators. They still had experts working on it. The AI did not make the decisions. The artists made the decisions. You're letting the AI do all the work, and what do you know? It gives garbage, and you're trying to make me look at it. I don't want to look at it. We all know these people, right? Like these people who like fell for crypto, or they fell for an MLM, and like a year and a half ago they texted you a picture of the NFT wallet. They were like, don't send this screenshot around, it'll lower the value. Or like your relative.
Honestly, the NFT art trend was kind of stupid to begin with, and I know plenty of people were laughing their posteriors off when the market went through its inevitable crash.
Who owns and drives a Tesla. I don't know what time you're watching this, but in my time, about a week ago, a billionaire built his own submarine against all logical advice and took a bunch of other really rich people down to the Titanic with him, and it exploded and they all died. And the internet had this conversation of like, is it okay to laugh at the deaths of billionaires at their own hubris, like an Icarus situation?
Well, dark humor is something I personally find acceptable, but some people don't like joking about things like that. And a lot of people don't think the teenager that also died in the Titan was a worthy subject for that joke.
Is it okay?
And as much as I dislike Stockton Rush and all I have learned about him since this happened, I do respect him for having the courage to go down in his sub, even if it wasn't tested.
Okay to laugh at that, and I think we all decided like, yeah, it's fine. But people drive Teslas. You know, it's not the same. But it's not the same.
Yes, both Tesla and Stockton Rush were overpromising the capabilities of their technology. Elon Musk is known for this. Elon Musk's job is to try to generate hype. It's not to try to make sure these things work. He tries to get the people he pays to program the autopilot to get it to work. And while the autopilot is impressive, it is not anywhere near the self-driving car stage yet. Okay, could you put some sound here, please? Okay, maybe not that.
This morning's blast was felt for miles in Cape Canaveral.
Anyway, I don't want to be mean to these people that keep falling for these things. Like, I think we live in a world where it's very hard to be alive and we all need money, and when you see a get rich quick scheme, sometimes you fall for it. Sometimes you get scammed. And it's not their fault, but like, we got to watch out for those people we know, because like, they're just, the machine learning scams are coming for them. They're coming for them. We can see it closing down on them, and now you can say the things to them, but it's not going to work. This is what I mean when I say that AI doesn't exist, but it's going to ruin everything. Like, I'm in my
How about we modify that statement? AI does exist, and the hype that tech pro CEOs are pushing about it will ruin everything unless ethical computer scientists say stop using things this way. See, I think we're actually in agreement on this. You're just phrasing it poorly.
30s, man. I've lived through crypto. I've lived through NFTs. I have lived through the MLM boss babe, Instagram babe boss babe. And I'm tired. I can't do it again. I don't want to see the AI tools version of all of this. I don't want to get emails from women I have not spoken to in 17 years that say like, hey, hun, just working on my machine learning course for $5,700. You can get 2 hours with me and I'll show you how to use AI optimization, SEO tools, babe, boss babe, babe. I don't want to see it, but we're going to have to see it. We're gonna have to see it. And it's not just in like scammers and grifters. Like you're gonna go to Thanksgiving and that one cousin who, bless his heart, he's so interested in science, but he doesn't understand that headlines are not science. And he's just gonna be like, hey, I just saw that ChatGPT made an equation for time travel. Oh my gosh. And like you have to
Well, at least it won't be like the people who are telling us that the grand unified field equation is 1 cubed is equal to the absolute value of pi.
be half a drink in and decide like, do you want to tell him that that's not how equations work and that's not how ChatGPT works, and AI doesn't exist, there's no fidelity, and it's unethical?
Well, here's the thing I don't think you realize, Dr. Collier. Maybe you should try running an unsolved physics problem through ChatGPT and see what it says. I've tried to get ChatGPT to tell me how to solve the P versus NP problem, as well as Google Gemini. What it will tell you, which is correct, is that these are unsolved problems and no one knows how to solve them. It will also do the same thing if you tell it to solve the runtime complexity for the Collatz conjecture, or just the Collatz conjecture itself.
To make any decisions based on them because of the data sets are biased? Are you going to tell them that? Or are you just going to have another drink and be like, yeah, cool, bud? I've been getting some version of this comment on YouTube for a while now. And I'm not going to post the real ones because it's such an embarrassing thing to say. It just shows such a lack.
Well, to be fair, I am absolutely certain that ChatGPT will write physics papers better than I will.
Of understanding of what AI tools are. AI tools, they don't make new things. They sort information and then they smush it back together, and they can be useful in like research, like large data sets, or like as an accessibility tool. Have I even talked about that? Like if you're a person who needs subtitles, everything's coming up Millhouse for you, right? Like subtitles are getting better and better. Machine learning tools are very, very useful as tools, but a machine learning tool, a ChatGPT, will never write a physics paper that advances the knowledge of physics in any way. That's not how.
Well, that's not what they're designed to do. That's not to say that AI will never do this. It's just that at the very earliest, we're decades away from anything like artificial general intelligence, and that's an optimistic estimate. And there are legitimate concerns over artificial general intelligence as well. However, I'm more worried about the AI technologies that currently exist, like facial recognition, being used on drones that are sent out to kill targets. Now, a few years ago, the Israeli military sent out a drone to kill out a Hamas leader. I was both amazed and horrified when I saw that story, because while it was an impressive technical achievement, and there's no denying that, the problem is I know facial recognition is often wrong, and I worry what happens if this tool gets into the hands of law enforcement. Are they actually going to check to make sure that the target the drone takes out is their actual target or just someone the machine misidentified.
How they work. You could get on ChatGPT and you could pay your $196 per month and you could say, please write a physical review letters paper about dark matter.
And I would actually like to see artificial intelligence get to the point where it doesn't need large training data sets, or we get so much hard drive space that it's not an issue, so we don't have to rely on the internet. That way we don't have, like large companies, doing this as a method of collecting data from this, because that's probably how these companies are going to end up their money. It's what Google, Twitter, and Facebook already do. And quite frankly, one of the things I am all for is limiting the amount of data companies are allowed to collect about us.
And it would do that. It would do that for you. It would look exactly like it was written in LaTeX, and it might even cite actual papers, but it will also cite papers that don't exist, and it will also have nonsense plots and nonsense equations all smushed together. And if you're a non-expert, you might look at it and be like, oh, wow, it did the thing. But if you have taken a high school physics course, you will look at it for 2 seconds and be like, this is nonsense. This is garbage, shaped like a physical review letters paper. This is an embarrassing thing to type, and it just points to how little journalists care.
Well, I recently read a math paper that someone who couldn't pass second grade math that I found hard to understand.
AI doesn't exist, and that's what we're calling it. That's what we're going to call it, and we're just going to have to deal with this for the next 15 years. I don't want to do it. And don't think for a second that it's just going to be like grifters and scammers and like that person who really loves science and wants AI to exist, so they keep talking about it. It's going to be like an idiot that looks like.
Well, I do want AI to exist. It already does. I want it to continue to be a useful tool. I want the CEOs pushing it to stop over-promising the capabilities of the technology, and I want the engineers, computer scientists, and programmers working on it to start saying, hey, we shouldn't do this to these corporations more often.
Like one of these guys.
The Jimmy McGee video on AI? No. Actually, I was trying to take a break from AI videos for a while because it's kind of an interest of mine, and I just don't want to overload the channel with it.
And they're going to go to a boardroom full of other idiots. I'm 21 years old, and my dad bought me a spot at Princeton, and I dropped out. And for some reason, that makes you think I'm smart. For some reason, dropping.
I can't imagine any person associated with the tech industry who was a dropout from an Ivy League college that everyone thought was smart, even though probably the last bit of code he wrote was GW Basic in 1980.
Out is seen as an achievement instead of like just.
And because that's a somewhat dated reference, I was, of course, referring to Microsoft founder Bill Gates.
Changing your mind or something. And I've invented an AI tool, and now you can fire 4,000 people at your company. And because, God.
Listen, labor is the largest cost of any business, and the reason tech bro CEOs are getting so excited about it is because they think they can fire the people who are most expensive to keep on staff. This is why I think it's going to turn out to be a disaster for these companies.
Capitalism, they're like, oh, third quarter is going to be real great if we fire 4,000 people, and you and I are going to have to deal with it. Like an airline is just going to fire 4,000 customer service people, and all the flights are canceled, and no one ever uses that airline again, and like the taxpayers are going to have to bail them out, but they're never going to hire.
Jimmy McGee video and AI.
4,000 people back, so forever. We're just going to have to deal with worse customer service. It's just going to be harder to fly in a freaking plane, harder than it is, because AI tools. I invented an AI tool.
Well, the thing is, if you hear someone say, I invented an AI tool, generally what they mean is, I am making API calls to either Gemini or ChatGPT.
I hate this for us. I really do. So, AI doesn't exist, but it's not going away and it's going to ruin everything. I've made some predictions. I thought I would start with things I would have predicted but have already happened because I'm too late making this video. The first is that, a lawyer uses ChatGPT to write a legal brief and then gets in big trouble. That already happened.
Yes, this did happen, but if I recall, it wasn't a lawyer.
There's legal about it. It wasn't even the lawyer, just another lawyer at the firm used ChatGPT. The lawyer on the case signed it, even though ChatGPT made up cases. There is no fidelity. AI doesn't exist. And he gave it to the judge, and the judge was like, explain this to me. Another thing I would have predicted is that some sort of therapy robot gets introduced so you can fire all your therapists, because who needs human connection when they're getting therapy?
Oh, this is a terrible idea, largely because of the hallucinations, or because they're getting advice from the internet, and as you know, people are never mean to each other on the internet.
That doesn't seem important. So an eating disorder hotline fired all the people who worked there, replaced it with a robot, and the robot quickly learned how to teach these young children,
And again, I brought this up earlier.
these boys and girls with eating disorders, how to be better at having an eating disorder. Who would have thought that would happen? It's almost
That is exactly what it did, by the way.
like there's no fidelity in artificial intelligence. It's almost like it's unethical to use artificial intelligence to make decisions, to have conversations with people without an expert present. Who would have thought? Okay, I saw this one a while ago, but a professor used ChatGPT to put the exams into ChatGPT to see if the students had used ChatGPT, and ChatGPT was just like, yeah, all of them, they're all fake. And so he gave them all Fs, and all the students were like, I can prove I didn't.
Well, that's not quite what happened. And there was one professor who falsely accused me of cheating at one point because he did not understand the difference between generative predictive text and an application programmer interface. Now, that is a professor that did not get a good review for me, and for good reason.
Use Chat.
Ultimately, I did pass the course, though, and me giving him a bad review didn't matter because he retired at the end of the semester.
GPT, and the guy was like, who would have thought? ChatGPT lied to me. Oh my goodness, who could have predicted this? So this one's been happening for nearly 4
Who could have predicted that ChatGPT gave you the wrong answer? Well, everyone working on AI who knows that hallucinations are an expected part of the process.
40 years, since the first computer program was designed to speak like a human, where
Oh, by the way, Eliza is still up. I have a link to it somewhere. Let me get it. If you want to play with it later, you can go play around with it. What Eliza essentially did was made us realize that although artificial general intelligence may be difficult, we can come up with programs that do a specific task using artificial intelligence technologies fairly easily. So yes, it's on the New Jersey Institute of Technology. I'm going to put a link in chat if anyone wants to play with Eliza.
people are easily convinced that it's a real human and it's alive. And this guy got fired from Google because he was like, I'm a whistleblower, man. The AI is real.
Actually, that's not quite accurate. His concerns were far more legitimate and much harder to understand. He did not actually claim it was sentient. He was essentially worried about a form of data colonization, where because it was using Western training data sets, it was showing Western biases. This is actually a legitimate concern if you're using these AI chatbots in countries that are not in the West.
It's like, I programmed you to say, I'm alive. And then when you said, I'm alive, I I think it's alive. It said it's alive, guys. I'm shocked this could have happened. I think it's really funny. Okay, so here are my predictions. I've already said the big one. Like some big company is gonna fire a bunch of people. The company's gonna go to shit.
You mean just one?
Taxpayers are gonna have to get them out. That's gonna happen.
I think that company is called Twitter.
I don't know why I feel like it's gonna be airlines. I just feel like it's gonna be an airline. My
No, I think it's going to be Twitter.
next prediction is that somebody's gonna die. That skin cancer app or something equivalent will come out. Someone will use it, trust what it says, and they will die, and the family will sue the app. And the app will be like, this is just a toy. We told you it's not medical advice. I also predict the reverse will happen. Like some doctor's office or a hospital will replace like a receptionist with an AI, and someone who needs medical help will go, and the AI receptionist will be like, you're fine. And they can't get a person, and then they'll die also, and the family will sue that doctor's office. I think some small government organization, maybe a DMV, replaces something with a chat bot, will fuck up like a rich person's day, and that rich person will take it to the Supreme Court. And I don't know what'll happen with that. They probably won't ban AIs, but they will ban.
Well, if there's something the Bureau of Motor Vehicles is known for in every state, it is its pleasant interactions with the general public and being a pleasure to go to.
And them from interfering with rich people's lives. Like there'll just have to be an option that's like, if your bank account has this much money, you can talk to a person instead of the AI. I predict a school district will get sued. A school district will like replace whatever guidance counselor sorts the students into courses with an AI. And rather than looking at like what the students have taken the years before and what they requested for their schedules,
But we're already actually using some AI techniques to solve some graph theory problems that are related to scheduling that are relatively difficult for a human to solve otherwise.
AI will sort them by like zip code. So like all the rich kids will go to AP Latin and all the poor kids will go to like gym and shop class. And obviously this will cause mass chaos. And you know, it's unethical to use AI to make decisions because it's always going to be biased. But like,
Well, the problem here is that there are towns that only have one zip code.
they don't know that yet. They will when they get sued and they can't buy textbooks for like the next 15 years. I predict every single consumer company will release a product that they already have, that already exists, but they'll just call it AI tools.
That's already happening.
Just like Gatorade, now with AI tools. Your fridge.
For heaven's sakes, when blockchain was the big thing, some company just put blockchain in its name because they thought it would raise the stock prices for a while. And the sad thing is, it did. The people who invest money want to hear whatever the latest tech buzzword is coming out of tech companies. This is why they keep pushing these tools and overpromising the limits of the technology.
Now has AI tools to help you know when to buy milk. Your phone doesn't have Siri anymore. Now we call it AI tools, even though it's the same exact code and it's already AI tools. And people will buy them again. They'll be like, I love this AI. God, I love AI. It's so great. Just like YouTube comes out and they're like, our algorithms now with AI. And it's like,
YouTube's algorithm has been using AI for years. The problem I have with YouTube's algorithm is the same problem I have with all social media algorithms. They're not open source, and even if they do release the algorithms, they don't let people tweak them to be more efficient or eliminate bias. The whole thing about open source is that people need to be able to make improvements to the algorithm as long as they have the skill to do so.
bro, it's the same algorithm. You already use a machine learning algorithm. What are you talking about? My next
The Google algorithm is not machine learning.
prediction. AI is going to permanently fuck
Well, at least the content selection algorithm wasn't machine learning, it might be now.
with someone's life. Like, imagine AI determines who can get a bank account, and some 21-year-old woman is applying for a bank account, and the computer is like, no, you can't have it because in 1974, someone with your exact name got a bank account and stole something or debts, something. And the young woman will be like, but I'm 21. I wasn't alive in 1974. That wasn't me. And the bank will be like, computer said no. So, and she'll have to like call her senator, and her senator will be like, well, the machine learning, it's machine learning. What are we going to do? The bureaucracy. And like a Netflix documentary will have to be made. And once it's made, everyone's going to be like, have you seen this crazy story where this woman can't get a bank account? And like, she didn't do anything wrong. And then eventually something will happen. But we're all just going to be like, what are they going to? The computer said no. What are we going to do? Okay, here's my prediction. So all the companies will replace all the people with AI tools, right?
That is already happening. And I don't think it's going well.
And as a result, companies will open, new companies will form, and they will be like a subscription service where you can purchase an AI tool to talk to the other AI tools until you get a person.
Again, this is already happening.
So like it'll just be robots talking to each other until something dings.
Honestly, I actually would use this service because I cannot stand voice recognition systems when I call into someplace.
And you can finally talk to customer service. Has anyone invented this? Should I copy?
Well, it depends on whether or not you mean screaming representative into the phone until you get to a person counts as artificial intelligence.
Copyright this idea. Okay, my next prediction is that a giant company like a TV studio or a movie studio is going to spend $800 million making a fully AI program, like the AI script with the AI characters and the AI editors, and it's going to be like, well, it's going to be we fed it all the Marvel movies, and since Marvel movies make $400 billion, this one's going to make $900 billion. Oh my God, it's going to be crazy, and then no one's going to watch it because no one wants to look at this shit. No one wants to see, this is soulless. This is garbage. Don't make me look at this. I'm not going to look at this. But they're going to do it, and they're going to release it, and the studio will blame Gen Z. They'll be like, Gen Z doesn't like movies anymore. They don't have the attention span to sit through a movie, and they'll learn nothing. All right. You're going to see dudes that look like this on Tinder, and they'll call their job prompt engineer. That's not my joke. I don't know where I saw it.
Well, the person I saw saying it was one of the Tech Pro CEOs.
But it's hilarious. I find it very funny. I predict we'll see lots and lots of think pieces about how AI is going to change everything. Everyone's going to lose.
AI has already changed quite a bit. The genie's out of the bottle and we can't put it back in, unless, of course, someone presses the reset button on society. Now, as much as I love the Fallout universe, I personally don't want to live there. I hope we don't have anything similar in real life either.
Lose their jobs. AI is going to change everything. It's going to be so fucking bleak. It's the Terminator situation. You don't need to worry about climate change because AI is going to be the Terminator. This article definitely wasn't written by the granddaughter of the person who founded ExxonMobil. It's fine. Don't look into it too much. You don't have to worry about the future. It's ruined by AI, not climate change or anything. There will be lots.
Well, there is actually a lot of environmental concerns, especially around water usage generated by AI. Now, this is not climate change, but it is a huge concern. These data centers do use a lot of water to cool their servers.
Lots of think pieces on how AI is going to save everything. Don't worry about climate change. AI is going to solve that. Don't worry about funding cancer research. AI is going to solve it. Don't worry about it. Everything in the future is a utopia of beautifulness because AI is going to solve it. And finally, I predict you will see lots and lots of think pieces how AI is going to ruin everything. Not in like a Terminator way, but in like a more bad way that's annoying. And that's actually the think piece you're in right now. Is it your first time? Was it good? Was it good for you?
This was not my first time. I've been worried about this far longer than you have, probably. And I started to worry about this when I started to realize, essentially, how the content selection algorithms worked. At first I thought, hey, I might be onto something here no one else has realized yet. Then I thought, hey, I'm not that smart. Other people probably have. Then I saw a Nova special where I realized that, even though Sophia Noble was concerned about the way Google was presenting ethnicities, that what we were worried about was essentially, while not exactly the same problem, the result of the same problem. That Google has a biased training data set that's based on the volume of searches it uses and what people search for. All right, it looks like we're at the end of this video. I apologize, this one was a little longer. Next week, we should have Dr. Tapioca Weasel on, and it's the last Terrence Howard video I have planned, as long as Terrence Howard does not go on Joe Rogan again. Because honestly, it's like, I am kind of tired of his math at this point, and people who want to think he's a genius, rather than not understanding that what he's doing breaks both the fundamental theorem of arithmetic and the fundamental theorem of algebra. Or I might just be a little annoyed at someone in the chat, and I probably shouldn't be. All right. Have a good night, everyone. I don't believe anyone in my particular community streams after me. I'll go check out that Jimmy McKee video and see if there's anything there. Go out and write some code.